Good morning, everyone. Onegaishimasu. This morning, I'd like to talk about relative and absolute ki a little bit. But first, I'll read the numbers 11, Shokushu, which is the essence of ki, written by Toi Sensei. We begin with the number one and counting all things. It is impossible that this one, even reduced to infinitely small particles of itself, can ever become zero. Because just as something cannot come from nothing, one can never arise from zero. Universal ki is the infinite gathering of infinitely small particles. This universal ki, condensed, becomes an individual, which further condensed becomes the one point in the lower abdomen, which in turn, infinitely condensed, never becomes zero. In this way, we are one with the universe. Thus, we realize the essence of ki. And then I also, if you don't mind, want to read you Shinichi Toi Sensei's latest blog, which I just finished in English last week and sent to headquarters. It's called Infused with Ki. We often use the word ki ga haru in Japanese to refer to responses that are ki infused, work that is ki infused, and even food that is ki infused. This is because one of the functions of ki is that mind moves when ki is infused. Let's say we want to give a gift to someone in order to make that person truly happy. It is necessary to know their circumstance. We don't want to send an alcoholic beverage to someone who doesn't drink alcohol. And it would be even worse to send alcohol to someone who likes to drink, but is refraining from doing so. If the recipient is in an office, it's best to send something that can be easily shared among everyone. And if it's a gift for the member of a family, it's best to send something that the whole family can enjoy. By putting yourself in the other person's place and trying to understand them, we can infuse their gift with ki in this way. The recipient is then moved by the ki. Let's say we are creating a document. There are two types of documents, ki infused and non-ki infused documents. In a ki infused document, there are various ways to make it easier to understand and to avoid misunderstandings from the reader's point of view. On the contrary, there are documents that are created without thinking about the reader at all. This is a typical example of a document that is non-ki infused. The other day, I received a notice from a public institution. No matter how many times I read it, I couldn't understand the meaning of it. And only after making inquiries did I finally understand it. It may have occurred to you that the same thing is true for teaching. There are two types of teachings, ki-infused teachings and non-ki-infused teaching. Knowing the level of understanding of the person to whom we are communicating gives us the ability to take into account how to communicate with them. And this makes it much easier for them to receive our message. This then becomes ki-infused teaching. Speaking only from our own point of view won't get ki to be infused in the teaching. Just because we may be fluent in language does not mean ki will be infused in our message. If we fill our every move with ki, this creates an infused teaching, and that ki will more likely move the other person's heart. I personally value ki ga haru, infused with ki, in everything I do. Our mind is not used properly. If our mind is not used properly, we will not be able to put ki into our actions, and this will not lead to the results we want. I always try to improve the way I use time in making arrangements, and therefore I'm constantly making sure about ki being infused into each thing I do. By having this perspective, I train daily. I want to perform ki-infused techniques in my practice, so this is all the practice of Shin Shin Tuitsu Aikido in daily life. let's work together to infuse ki in all of our actions. So when Toi Sensei writes the Shokushu, that's universal ki, he calls it, absolute ki. Everything is made of ki. The whole universe is ki. We are filled with ki because we're made of ki, okay? So that's absolute ki. But the Japanese also use the term relative ki, or they use ki, the word ki, in a relative way. So that's what Shinichi Toi Sensei is talking about, or that's the way he's using it when he talks about ki infused actions or ki infused food, ki infused documents, ki infused teaching. So, and people often ask me about this, like, is this, personal ki and universal ki? Well, I suppose you could call it that. Toi Sensei, both Toi Sensei and Suzuki Sensei would often look at someone and say, that person has very strong ki. So what does that mean? Well, basically, that just means that the person takes great care and pays very close attention to everything they do. So one time, Shinichi Toi Sensei is a good piano player. And we used to have a grand piano in the middle of the gathering room at headquarters in Japan. And one time he sat down and said, told us he was going to play a piece for us. They played a short piece on the piano. It was very nice. He's a good piano player. And they said, now I will play it with ki. He played the same piece, exactly the same, but it was very moving. And everybody felt that. And he said, so that's the difference of playing piano with or without ki. So it was very mysterious to people. And but when he basically said that he was just paying more attention with his whole mind and body to what he was doing. He wasn't just playing it off. He put himself into what he was doing. So that's really what he's talking about in this blog. I don't know if you read these blogs, but of course you can go to Shinichi Toi Sensei and online and you'll get his blog in Japanese and in English. So this is very interesting to me because it's really looking at ki in two different ways. And it's always important to not be only in one area. That's why we practice, Toi Sensei asks us to practice Shugyo practice or Taiga, which is absolute recognition and engagement in the absolute and recognition of and engagement in the relative, both at the same time. This is mind-body unification. This is living our life completely. This is not being stuck in the non-dual where we don't recognize or pretend to not recognize everyday things, or it's not being just bound to everyday things so we don't recognize that we are made of ki, that we are born of the ki of the universe, that we have certain characteristics that we are born with, like being one with the universe. Okay, so let's do some ki breathing. The way that Shinichi Toi Sensei is using the word ki obviously refers to the quality of something. And for something to have true quality, then that means it's infused with ki, which means it's the result of a very deep and caring attention to whatever it is that you're making or doing. And not only that, but taking all the conditions into account. The more we can include, in other words, the more we can extend key, the more we can include in our consideration, in our task, whatever that might be, even if it's like just cooking, just chopping vegetables, no matter what it is, it behooves us to practice with a deeper and deeper awareness, including everything and caring deeply. So that's, I think, what relative key is referring to. Please tell me if you have any questions or comments about this difference between absolute key and relative key. How they function, why they are, what's going on.
I have something. Oh, go ahead, Ilaria.
Oh, thank you, Sensei. Good morning, Sensei. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Ilaria.
Something that came up for me was key infused speaking. Just paying a lot of attention to everything we say and how we say it, and having gentleness and just intention and awareness behind our words. If you could say something about that.
Well, I think you just did. I think that's very nice what you said. I can't help but mention that because of the condition of my voice, so key infused speaking doesn't necessarily mean the quality of the voice itself. I really have no choice about that at the moment. But even with a crappy voice like mine, there's a big difference, exactly because of what you say in terms of what you put into your caring. Again, it all has to do with the depth of our attention. And when we pay deep attention, it's because we care about something, right? That's the only reason we do that. So when we have a great sense of gratitude for being alive and having this opportunity to even say one thing to someone else, then we'll say that with great care and great compassion, great meaning. So I think that's very important. And just across the boards, you know, and okay, well, I'll let you say something. Lynn, you wanted to speak.
Yeah, so, we all this talk about, key and, my key, your key, the universe's key, all of that. So then I'm thinking, at what point, and maybe this is silly, but at what point relative key come out and commingle with absolute key, and do you know what I mean? It's crazy making sometimes when you start trying to think about it.
Well, thank you for that. Yes, of course, it's crazy making if you think about it that way. Yeah, well, I think what you're really expressing is when we try to figure something out with our intellectual, conceptual mind, no matter what it is, it's crazy making. But man, when you're talking about the fundamental key of the universe, it's enough to really drive a person mad. So, and it's like Shinichi Sensei says, it's all about feeling. It's not about thinking. So You know, when we're sitting in meditation, for instance, everybody, of course, wants to have key infused meditation. So if you're thinking, of course, you're not caring, you're not paying deep attention. But when you're feeling, do you understand what I mean by feeling? Is like feeling the presence, feeling your presence or the presence. How do I say that? Feeling being here completely. And it's not just inside this skin and bones. It's quite, it goes out quite far. We can feel when we care. And the more, you know, I say this paying attention, that it's really being enveloped in or subsumed by or caught by. Our attention is caught by the profoundness of this feeling, not of any idea about key, but just the presence of key, the feeling of the key of the universe. And when we feel the key of the universe, the relative key must be very strong in us. So that's as far as I go with trying to figure it out. It's just a matter of experiencing it. Thank you for that, because it's a universal problem that you expressed.
Yeah.
Okay, someone else, please.
Good morning, Sensei. It's Prakash.
Good
So
morning,
you
Prakash.
you mentioned the word presence, and that my reflection was that when you're doing something with presence, that's relative, key infused action. But when the separation between you and the key of the universe, it's like the presence is doing you, and there's no separation. Is that kind of what
Maybe
you?
just say a little bit more about that. I'm not sure everybody
Oh, okay.
gets exactly what you're saying.
Well, the key infused presence is that you're paying attention and you're keeping one point, and your care, you're fully present with what you're doing. And then when that sense of you as a separate entity dissolves and you don't feel separate from the key of the universe, the absolute key, then it's like you're being done.
Oh, yeah,
Everything you do, the
right.
universe is doing you. Yeah.
So what we call that Musoku in breathing, for instance, or Mushin. We say Mushin, which means no mind. But of course, mind is still present. Awareness is there, but there just isn't any person doing anything. It's all being done.
Yeah.
And so we often have this experience sitting in meditation. Yes. But it also often happens to us, as we were talking about on Friday night, at odd moments, just out of nowhere. And so it's not, you know, that's something that we might fall into thinking, I need to work on making that happen more. But it's there's something called grace involved there, right? Yeah. It's not like up to Chris Curtis. So we need to, instead of doing, we need to be allowing. Sometimes I like to think about it.
Yeah. Is that not really what's at the root of our practice, where we're actually becoming receptive to the grace happening?
Absolutely.
But we can't make it happen. Yeah.
Yeah. It's making ourselves more accident prone in that direction. Some smart teacher once said, not me. But I never forgot. Thank you, Prakash. That's very insightful, helpful. Alyona, say something.
Hi, Sensei. Hi,
Hello.
everyone. I don't know really what I like Lean Sensei comments because I'm always just I mean, just what is universe key or mind key, and it really make me confused, maybe like this. So, and I really try to figure it out, and maybe too much thinking. So that's what
Yeah,
I think.
thank you. Well, of course, like I said, any amount of trying to figure it out is not just not going to lead you to anything real. It's also something you're doing that you could be doing something else. So when you're struggling with something mentally, you could be just feeling what it is that you're concerned about, feeling the feeling that surrounds that. In other words, when you feel motivated to try to understand something, you're being drawn to it, right? So you're curious about it, we might say. So if we're curious, instead of rubbing the parts of our brain together, that we can lend our attention without thinking about it. We can just lend our attention to it, and we call this feeling it, right? I mean, that's what it's like. It's feeling it in our body and around our body. It's feeling that we use the word before, presence, feeling the presence of key of the universe, for instance. And then we'll find if you just do that for a few minutes, the struggle just disappears. It's only something that it's almost something that we do to distract ourselves from actually experiencing, what we are, who we are, how it feels to be me, how it feels to be the very center of everything I perceive. What does that mean? Not in words, but what does it feel like to be me? Yeah. So whenever you have the urge to torture yourself with some thinking, I recommend that. Sit in the feeling of it. Okay, well, listen, everybody, that was great. Thank you very much. We have Shinichito Sensei to thank for his latest blog, which really informed us a lot about how we think about, how we use, I should say, ki in our daily life, or how we can use ki perhaps more in our daily life by paying more attention, caring more deeply, being more grateful. Domo arigatou gozaimashita. See you soon.